Always wanted to say this, live from New York.
Welcome, Dr. Robert Lustig, our distinguished guest for this evening.
The thing that gives me hope is that things are changing.
Dr. Lustig is a pioneer in the field of metabolic health, a prolific author, and founder of BioLumen, which is an SOSV company. Joining Dr. Lustig is my colleague at SOSV, Mohan Iyer.
What is something, but we all kind of believe in, that's actually killing us?
One word, calories. What is a calorie? I mean, calorie is a unit of physics. Fat makes you fat. All of that came from 1902 and was never challenged. And the fact of the matter is, it's complete and utter hogwash.
It all comes down to a simple choice, really. We either get busy living or get busy dying.
Hi, my name is Deborah Zajac, and I'm general partner here at IndieBio New York alongside Stephen Chambers. We're both general partners here at SOSV. Here at IndieBio New York, we've been operating for about 5 years and making investments and going on 100 companies. But this evening, I'm very excited to introduce the third in our series of what we call SOSV Deep Tech Live. Here at SOSV, we're focused on making investments into and building deep tech and biotech companies that will have an impact on planetary health and human health. And so we're very excited to have leaders in the field join us in conversation to highlight some of the key issues that we're all looking at. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Robert Lustig, our distinguished guest for this evening. As you all well know, Dr. Lustig is a pioneer in the field of metabolic health, a prolific author, and founder of BioLumen, which is an SOSV company. And they commercially launched their 𝐁𝐞𝐞𝐲𝐨𝐽 product. Thank you very much for being here this evening, Dr. Lustig.
My pleasure.
And joining Dr. Lustig is my colleague at SOSV, Mohan Iyer. Mohan has been in the field, in the far reaches of healthcare for a number of years, beginning at Genentech, followed by major roles at companies in diabetes diagnostics, the human microbiome, therapeutics, and much more. Thank you both, gentlemen, and over to you, Mohan.
Thank you, Deborah. And thank you, Rob.
Oh,
Truly
my pleasure.
You all should, I'm not going to try to repeat anything that you can find on YouTube. You should definitely go to YouTube, though, and check out Dr. Robert Lustig's accomplishments in both the bio and all the books. But he's a generous man. When we talked together, he said, just call me Rob. And that's the kind of guy he is. We can just engage at this very personal level. Thank you so much for being here.
It's truly my pleasure. And, just saying, obviously I'm associated with IndieBio in San Francisco. I'm very happy to be here in this venue for the first time tonight, but by no means is New York my first rodeo. I am a Brooklynite, and unfortunately, I talk like one.
Always wanted to say this, live from New York. So anyway,
it's Wednesday night.
Yeah. But this is the bio. It's a pleasure to have you guys here. And I know that there are folks out there looking at us live streaming. Thank you for attending. So, Rob, I wanted to open this up with sort of a metaphor and a way to think about our hour together. And I was thinking about a quote from one of my favorite movies. I don't know if we share this, The Shawshank Redemption. It's such a great movie. And here are two inmates, if you remember them. This also dates me, by the way, if anybody else likes The Shawshank Redemption. Okay, good. Yeah, so there's Andy Dufresne, played by Tim Robbins, and then there's Red, played by Morgan Freeman, and they're both inmates for life. The prison metaphor we'll tap into a little bit later. And Andy says this, it all comes down to a simple choice, really. We either get busy living or get busy dying. So I want to spend 20 minutes about how we, at a personal level, institutional level, corporate level, policy level, in metabolic disease are really getting busy dying. It is sad, and we got to bring that out.
Hate to tell you, but fetuses are getting busy dying.
Yeah.
And that's where I come in. I'm a pediatrician, and I'm supposed to like help children, and children now get all of the adult diseases except they get them as children. And you've heard that cancer's just occurring earlier and earlier, diabetes earlier and earlier. And we have an epidemic of obese newborns. I mean, they don't diet and exercise. The fact is the paradigm is broken, and our understanding of how this is occurring is not only broken, but pejorative.
Right. And we're going to explode a bunch of myths, and I recommend Rob's books to you about how this is working in different levels of our life and society. We're going to spend 20 minutes. We're a deep tech VC firm. We're going to 20 minutes diving deep into the science of this. We're going to geek out on metabolic disease at the cellular level, at the molecular level. Rob loves this. We've done this before. And then we're going to spend 20 minutes about the get busy living. So we have to figure out a way out of this mess. And so I hope you'll lead us with some thoughts there. So that's the basic outline of the hour together. So let me ask you this. What is something that most of us have gotten wrong, that is a myth, that it's truly false, but we all kind of believe in, that's actually killing us?
One word: calories. Everyone thinks it's about calories. Everybody thinks, well, you're obese. And if you're obese, it's a problem of caloric intake and caloric expenditure, calories in, calories out. Therefore, it's about two behaviors: gluttony and sloth. Therefore, if you're fat, it's your fault. Therefore, diet and exercise. Therefore, any calorie can be part of a balanced diet. Therefore, don't pick on our calories, go pick on somebody else's calories.
And this is not
true? The concept
of
calories. No, it's completely false. Everything I just said is absolute, total bullshit.
Okay, wait. The bagels in the West Coast suck. And when I came to New York,
that is true.
Yeah,
true.
I had a bagel this morning, and I had some schmear on it. So I don't know what that 500 calories. And then I went to walk on the High Line. I did a Peloton ride. I walked to a board meeting down there. I think I took off 500. I think I did not gain anything, Rob. How do you mean that the calorie myth is broken?
Okay, there are things about the food that have nothing to do with calories. Now, what is a calorie? I mean, calorie is a unit of physics. It is how much energy do you have to add to 1 gram of water to raise the temperature 1 degree centigrade.
Yeah.
That's a calorie. It's a unit of physics. And I don't deny the existence of that concept. But to then apply that to the human condition and say what you eat and what you burn is whether you gain weight or not, which of course is where, the entire field has been stuck in the last 50 years, is this notion that, the insulin resistance that we know is at the heart of this problem is a function of the obesity. The fact is, there are plenty of obese people who are metabolically healthy, and there are plenty of thin people who are metabolically ill. Well, if calories are the reason, then how do you explain that? And then also, how do you explain the obese newborn? You can't explain it with calories.
That's right.
Right? It just doesn't work. So we humans are not bomb calorimeters. Okay, that's how we got here, was through this machine called the bomb calorimeter. We got here through this guy by the name of Wilbur Atwater, who in 1902 developed the bomb calorimeter and showed that fat, when you explode fat in a bomb calorimeter, you get 9 calories per gram. And protein, you get 4 calories per gram. And carbohydrate, you get 4 calories per gram. So therefore, fat is the most energy-dense food. Therefore, fat makes you fat. Okay, all that came from 1902, and was never challenged.
Yeah.
Okay, and the fact of the matter is, it's complete and utter hogwash, and always has been. And it is only now that we're actually understanding just how much hogwash it is. And to be honest with you, for at least 4 decades, the NIH would not fund anything that even questioned the existence or the primacy of this concept of calories.
Is a calorie in the, do you make a distinction between a calorie in the lips versus calorie metabolically?
Absolutely.
So give us an example of.
I'll give you 4. Okay. I mean, if you watch YouTube, you've heard these 4, but let me, they work. Let's start with almonds. You like almonds?
I love almonds.
I love almonds. Almonds are great.
Obama had 8 almonds every day. So.
Yeah, well, he should have had 80 almonds every day. Okay. All right, you eat 160 calories in almonds. How many of those calories do you absorb?
120.
130. Pretty close. Okay. You ate 160, you absorbed 130. Where'd the other 30 go? The fiber in the almonds, the soluble and insoluble fiber, acted as a barrier to the absorption of that portion, that 20 to 25% of calories, making them unavailable for absorption, bringing them further down the intestine where the microbiome would chew it up instead for their own purposes, because you got to feed the microbiome or the microbiome will feed on you. Well, that fiber in the almonds actually did that job. So even though you ate 160, you absorbed 130 because the other 30 wasn't for you. But you clocked them here at the mouth. Who cares? What you care about is what did you absorb at the intestine. So that's one reason a calorie is not a calorie. Second reason, protein. So as you know, protein is made up of amino acids. You have to cleave proteins into amino acids to be able to use them for either building proteins or for energy, either or. Now, if you use them for energy, you have to take the amino group off. So you have to turn them from an amino acid into an organic acid. And then they can enter the Krebs cycle in the mitochondria. But the process of taking that amino group off costs twice as much energy putting it into the system because, than preparing, say, a carbohydrate for processing within the system. So there's a net loss of protein compared to carbohydrate. So a calorie is not a calorie because it depends on where it came from as to how many you got left.
Yeah.
Fats. Okay. Over here we have omega-3s, heart healthy, anti-inflammatory, anti-Alzheimer's, save your life, single most important thing you can put in your body. Over here we have trans fats, the devil incarnate. Okay. Consumable poison.
Hopefully gone or leaving us.
Well, yeah. I mean, yes, no.
Okay.
It's a story, but not completely. But we know it's a problem, so that's good. Okay, they're both 9 calories per gram. One will save your life, one will kill you because a calorie is not a calorie. And finally, the one that I did my research on, the one that sort of brought me, brought me to the dance, fructose and glucose. So everyone knows glucose is the energy of life. Glucose is so important that if you don't consume it, your body makes it. We have this process called gluconeogenesis, where we can turn amino acids or fat into glucose. For people who don't consume starch or glucose, like the Inuit, they had no place to grow a carbohydrate. They ate whale blubber.
Whale blubber, yeah.
They still had a serum glucose level. Where'd they get the glucose? They made it. Right? That's how important glucose is. Conversely, fructose, this sweet molecule in sugar, is completely vestigial to all eukaryotic life. There is no animal cell on the planet that uses fructose for energy. Now, we do have a metabolic capacity to metabolize a limited portion of our dietary fructose. It's small. In the same way we can do it with alcohol. It's small, but we overbinge routinely. Well, we do the same thing with fructose. And the problem is the same thing that happens with alcohol is the same thing that happens with fructose. We fry our liver. That fatty liver disease that is now 45% of all Americans.
Yeah.
Where do you think it came from? That's where it came from. And it had nothing to do with calories.
Right.
So there's just 4 reasons a calorie is not a calorie.
Okay. I'm getting convinced here.
So it's not about how much food, it's about the quality of that food. And it just so happens this, monstrosity that we have created called ultra-processed food, okay, does everything wrong.
Right. So a calorie is not a calorie. I think somewhere in there you said a sugar is not a sugar. There are different types of sugar. with all the
Right.
different names. So
A protein is not a protein. A fat is not a fat.
oh my
A
gosh.
fiber is not a fiber.
So
Okay,
nothing is for real.
You have to know the
This whole-
science. Well, you have to know the science. Once you know the science, then you can understand how this all works. The problem, of course, is that the public is not indoctrinated in this. They don't even know that there is a problem. So the minute you say something, they basically think you're either nuts or they go off onto crazy diets and and become influencers.
Yeah, I know. So let's go to fats, and we've done a little on sugar, glucose, and fructose. Let's go to fats.
Okay.
Is there a real difference between, say, gut fat and fat other places, fat in different parts of your?
Well, so first of all, you need fat.
Yes.
Okay, you need fat. There are essential fatty acids. Okay, you cannot live without these essential fatty acids. One of them is omega-3s. Okay, those are essential fatty acids. Where do you get omega-3s from?
Fish oil?
Fish.
Right.
Fish, mostly. I mean, you can get them from eggs.
Yeah.
You can get them from fish. You can get a little bit from poultry, as long as it's, pasture-raised poultry. You don't get it from vegan sources.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me back up. There is an omega-3 that you can get from vegan sources called ALA, alpha-linolenic acid. And ALA actually does reduce the risk for cardiovascular disease. So that's good. And I'm not, telling people they shouldn't eat their vegetables. They should. Okay? And ALA is good. However, the other two omega-3s are EPA and DHA. The conversion of ALA to EPA and DHA is less than 1%. So you're not getting the EPA and DHA your brain needs if all you're eating is vegetables. Okay, you need an animal source. Now, that drives the vegans nuts. But this is the truth. Okay, and so we need to find a way to be able to incorporate those into products. But then they'd say, well, but they came from an animal, so we're not going to eat them anyway. So it gets very complicated. And I'm committed to trying to work with everybody, no matter what their diet.
Right. So yeah, we've got from the molecular side, little all these words that are words we think we know, but we really don't know, that are confusing us. Let's get.
Well, yeah, one of them is weight, because there's different kinds of weight.
Yes.
There's subcutaneous fat and visceral fat and liver fat, and they're not the same.
Yes.
Okay. There's, fat, there's dietary fat and body fat. They're not the same. There's sugar, which could be dietary sugar, like, sucrose, or blood sugar, which is only glucose.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, we have the same name that we apply to different phenomena. And the food industry likes it that way, because all it does is create confusion.
Okay, let's go there. So big food industry, is this confusion already there, and they just liked it?
Yeah,
or did they perpetuate it?
Oh, they perpetuate it.
They perpetuate it.
We know they perpetuate it because we have the documents that tell us so. UCSF has the industry documents library, okay? And we now have a organized research unit at UCSF called the Center to End Corporate Harm. Okay, and we have actually a paper right now at the New England Journal that is in revision.
But aren't they just
talking about all of the things that the food industry?
But they're
does.
a business. They're in
they're
Wall
a business
Street.
to make money.
They've got to make money.
Yeah.
So they make a great tasting food that people like. It's potato chips. So give us a breakdown of what they did wrong exactly.
Well, so if that's all they did, then they didn't do anything wrong, because they satisfied their shareholders.
Yes.
The question is, do they have a different responsibility because they are a food manufacturer? That's the question. And that's a question for SOSV.
Yes.
Because, we have startups here that are in the food business. Do they have a responsibility beyond shareholder value? Yeah. And that's a big question.
Right.
That's a question we're not going to answer today, Mohan.
Yeah, but at least we want to touch on it. By the way, there's a no holds barred.
I'm either going to have to take you to the bar or to the woodshed. I'm not sure which.
No, I get it. But, this does remind me of an analogy that, like, the petroleum company said that recycling is not their problem.
Yeah, well, right.
But it is.
But it is.
Yeah,
yes.
but it is. So,
But it is.
but let's. But I want to take it to a place that helps you understand it. I want to. This is a tough topic. You want to go there, we'll go there.
Huh.
It's the area of personal responsibility.
Oh man,
and
my favorite.
But the reason I want to go there is I want to go to policy questions after this.
Yeah.
We've gone from cellular to organism to policy.
Yeah.
So the question that really is, there is something about foods, and I want you to demystify that, which really speaks to the reward center of the brain. So it's not something. It's a different level. It feels than like I don't know. An unemotional choice that I'm a quote unquote rational choice that I'm making. Right. So can you demystify that and sort of lay that bedwork down, and then we can sort of ask, okay, if that's the food, we can then figure out what big food is.
I'm going to take it yet to a higher level.
Amazing.
Yet again. Okay. Yeah. Totally on point. Absolutely. Okay. You've probably heard of this guy named John Maynard Keynes.
Yeah.
You heard of him. Okay. Keynesian economics ruled the United States from 1930 through 1970. Okay. And what he believed in was something called value. And value was utility over cost.
Right.
Okay. And he said that people were rational actors, and a rational actor could determine utility over cost and determine the value for them.
Yes.
That's what he said. Okay. Then came along this guy by the name of Daniel Kahneman.
Yeah.
Okay. Nobel Prize winner.
One of my professors.
Absolutely. And appropriately so. I mean, he's a fantastic guy.
Yes.
Wrote the book Thinking Fast and Slow. Super important. Everybody should read it. Okay. And he believed that, no, we were not rational actors. We were irrational actors.
Right.
Okay. And he showed how risk aversion actually affects
and hidden biases,
conscious decision making, behavioral economics.
Yes.
This concept that you can actually change people's minds without even them knowing it, based on fear.
Right.
Okay. And appropriately so. And he showed all
Nobel
of these
Prize.
empiric and won the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. He and Amos Tversky, who died way too soon.
Yeah.
Yep. It's very sad. Okay. There's another actor.
Another economic actor.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
It's called the hedonic actor.
The hedonic actor.
Okay. And this is a term coined by my colleague and good friend uptown, Jeffrey Sachs.
Oh.
Okay. Who knows Jeffrey Sachs or knows of him?
Yep.
He's a big shot. Okay. He's amazing. And he said, no, there's a third actor. It's called the hedonic actor. And they cannot assess value also, but for the opposite reason as the irrational actor. They cannot, because, it's utility over cost. Okay. But when you need something because you're addicted to something, you'll pay any amount. And that's basically what he demonstrated, and the phenomenon of what we call price elasticity. Okay?
Yeah.
So what is price elasticity? Price elasticity is how much will consumption go down if the price of a product goes up 1%. That's what price elasticity is. So things that are price elastic will conform to the price, means they're not addictive, like eggs.
Right.
When the price of eggs goes up, people stop eating eggs. We just found out a few months ago. What are the components that are of the food supply that are price inelastic? Fast food, soda, juice, all the sugar-containing stuff. And the reason is because sugar is addictive. And we have the data to show that sugar is addictive. And we also have the economic data to show that sugar is addictive. Well, in our
area, we're in the Bay Area, Berkeley has a tax.
Yes, absolutely. Well, San Francisco has a tax.
But where I live, in Menlo Park, Palo Alto, we don't have a tax. So the same. Same good.
So everybody comes from Berkeley to
Palo Alto. The 20-cent arbitrage on a cup of soda.
Yeah, you're kind of mad about the Costco people clogging up your lines.
But it is interesting that. So you're saying that there's something about it that makes us buy regardless of price.
Exactly.
And
the food industry knows it.
Okay.
And that's why.
And is it a shared
they did
responsibility or is it their responsibility?
That's their responsibility.
Got it.
There are things in the food that shouldn't be in the food, and we have the data specifically for Philip Morris, who of course became Altria. From 1985 through 2001, they bought up food companies. Okay?
Right.
Philip Morris bought up U.S. Foods, and R.J. Reynolds bought, Nabisco. Okay.
Yeah.
And you look at the products that they had in 1985 versus 2001, and they are heavy-handed, sugar-containing, because they were doing the same thing to the food supply that they did to tobacco.
All right.
They jacked up the nicotine. They jacked up the sugar.
All right.
For the same friggin' exact reason. And we have it in their own words in the UCSF documents library.
All right, we're going to get back to that. This is how we're dying, guys. You want to make you know. Let's go to Big Pharma. I hear GLP-1s are here. I hear 10 million people are on it now, probably going to 30 million. Obesity is solved. What are we talking about? Is Big Pharma putting out the answer in the form, especially in the form of GLP-1s?
All right.
It curbs appetite. It even curbs addiction, Rob.
Yes,
and it curbs gambling addictions.
I know.
Here, and it helps with Alzheimer's. It's an amazing drug.
Hear you. It is an amazing drug.
Okay,
except it's not. A lot of things going on here.
Okay.
All right. So, by the way, we had discussed this on the phone beforehand. So I knew it was coming. I wear 3 hats. Okay. I wear the clinician hat. I wear the scientist hat. I wear the public health advocate hat. Okay. And how I feel about GLP-1s depends on which hat I'm wearing at the moment. So when I'm wearing the clinician hat, hey, I'm glad they're here because they work. And we have the data to show that they work. And God knows we got a whole lot of people with a whole high BMI and, metabolic perturbations that are going to kill them. And so, it's either bariatric surgery or GLP-1s. And so I'm glad they're here.
Yeah.
Now, let me put the scientist hat on for a minute. Why do they work? And they work in 2 places. Mohan just mentioned one of them. They work at the brain. They work at the nucleus accumbens. They work at the reward center. They make food less rewarding. Now, for some people, that's probably important and probably good. We don't know which people yet. It's part of the problem. We know that they're associated with a whole lot of depression, but not suicide. Doesn't seem to have generated a suicide signal, but depression, big time. So that's not a good thing by itself.
Right.
Okay. And the reason is because when you lower reward, you basically feel lousy. That's kind of part and parcel of lowering reward. And the problem, of course, is that all of these people are so addicted to sugar that if you actually change that, they can't get the reward out of it, even when they, consume large amounts. And that actually becomes dysphoria. They don't feel good.
Right.
That's a problem. All right. What about the fact that only 1/3 of the people who take it actually benefit from it? And that's why there's such a recidivism. And there's such a recidivism.
Yeah.
So many people go off it. And the people who went on it and lost weight and go off it gain it all back because they haven't actually solved the problem.
I heard the lean muscle mass may not be coming back.
We're getting there.
Okay.
Give me a minute. You are jumping the gun here, Milan. That's right. We're going there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, and then the question is, number one, when you lose the weight, you're losing both fat and muscle. Now, losing fat is good, but losing muscle is not. Okay. Sarcopenia is one of the things that's most associated with early mortality. So losing muscle is not a good idea. Okay. Do you know what else causes loss of fat and muscle equally? Starvation. Starvation causes that. Well, that's why it works, because you're starving, because you can't eat. Well, you can't eat because of the second place where this stuff is working. It's working on your GI tract. It's delaying gastric emptying. It's actually stopping your stomach from working. Okay. Right. So that's why you get the nausea. That's why you get the vomiting. That's why you get the pancreatitis. That's why you get the gastroparesis. Stomach turns to stone. And when you take the drug away, a lot of those patients, they still have it.
They still have it.
That's like a huge problem. And by the way, it's not on the label.
Yes, it did show up in that.
Oh my gosh!
From the diabetes trials.
And right now, there's a lawsuit against Novo Nordisk from a group of plaintiffs over gastroparesis.
All right, we've gotten busy dying for 20 minutes. We got to move to the next section.
Oh no!
But before I do that, I'll do one
we didn't even get to the public health advocate part.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, we're spending. I think we're spending now $5 trillion on healthcare in the United States. 4.9.
Almost, yeah, almost 5.
4.9.
Yeah.
The cost of obesity, which is also cardiovascular health, which is also all MACE, MASH, which is liver conditions, and then you add on other things. Yeah, tell us a little bit about what is this food, sugar, fat thing causing in a public sense?
The food industry grosses $1.9 trillion a year. Okay, we spend almost $5 on healthcare, of which 75% is basically the treatment of chronic metabolic diseases
that's caused
by the food. Okay, so that is a huge sink going down the tubes. Conversely, if we just got added sugar in this country down to USDA guidelines, instead of spending that 4.1 trillion, we would actually save 3.0 trillion with no side effects. In other words, we could get better weight loss with no side effects and save money if we fix the food.
Wow.
So to me, GLP-1s are kind of like the worst alternative of the two. But what are you going to do?
We're going to come back to fixing some of this in the last 20 minutes, but I want to go to maybe a 10-minute, so 20-minute sort of deep tech. So I just changed my plan here because of the timing. I'm going to throw out a word. This is going to be a scientific word, and just go for it. Just geek out on it. And as it relates to this topic, of course. Mitochondria.
I knew it was coming. The duck came down. I won $100.
Yeah.
Mitochondria. Okay. So we all know it's about calories in, calories out, right?
Not.
Good. But it is about mitochondria. It is about mitochondria. So what are mitochondria? They're the little energy burning factories inside all of our cells. Okay. Here's a way to think about the problem. Okay. Mitochondria make a chemical called ATP. Now, you all took biology, 10th grade. I know you learned it and then you promptly forgot it, but this is actually a chemical you need to know what it is. ATP. Every cell burns ATP. Every thought is ATP. Every motion is ATP. Okay, ATP is life. Okay, and your mitochondria make ATP. What if they don't make enough? Then you're going to be ATP depleted. What if your cells use up too much ATP? That's called stress. That's going to make you ATP depleted. What if you don't make enough and you're stressed? Now you're multi-ATP depleted. How does that show up in terms of your clinical well-being? It shows up in all sorts of ways. It shows up in changes in systemic health. It shows up in changes in mental health. It shows up in changes in cognitive health. And by the way, I just want to introduce my colleague here, Dr. Anna Yusim, sitting here right here, psychiatrist from Yale. We are currently writing an op-ed for the New York Times about exactly this. That's why I spend the moment talking about it. So when your mitochondria are screwed, you're screwed. Well, there are a lot of ways to screw your mitochondria. Okay? More than the Kama Sutra. Okay? There are a lot of ways to screw your mitochondria. And the fact is that all of them are in play. And they're actually hurting our mitochondria. Air pollution, ionizing radiation, chemicals in the environment. There's a whole host of things. But the big one, the big kahuna, the 2,000-pound gorilla in the room is sugar. Sugar is a direct mitochondrial toxin. So the more sugar you add, the less well your mitochondria work. Therefore, the greater the systemic health problems, the greater the mental health problems, the greater the societal health problems. we need to mind our mitochondria, and we're not. In fact, we're doing the exact opposite right now.
Yeah.
The question is, can we do better? And the answer is, holy shit, yeah. Okay. But like, we need the help of the industry in order to be able to do that. And that's where this policy thing comes in.
Great. So I'm just, these are a little bit, I'm picking out of my bag scientific words, so not in particular order. Barrier function, gut barrier function.
Yep.
How does it relate?
All right. So your gut is a sewer. Literally, a sewer. What's the definition of a sewer? A pipe with shit in it. Okay? It's a sewer, right? All right. Now, the goal is to absorb the good stuff and leave the shit where it belongs, right? Going out, you know where. That's the goal. In order to do that, the intestine has to have barriers to keep the bad stuff at bay. And there are 3 barriers. The first one is a physical barrier. The second one is a biochemical barrier. And the third one is an immunologic barrier. 3 barriers. The first barrier, the physical barrier, is the mucin layer. That's on the surface of your intestinal epithelial cells. Okay? It prevents the bacteria from attaching to your intestinal epithelial cells. Very important. Problem is, you have to feed those bacteria, or your bacteria will feed on you. It will actually strip the mucin layer right off your intestine. And then those bacteria can oppose your intestinal, and that's where IBD, IBS, inflammatory bowel disease, leaky gut comes from, is basically a breakdown in that mechanical barrier. Okay, so you have to feed your microbiome. You have to feed your bacteria so they don't eat your fiber. They don't eat your mucin. Okay, how do you do that? Fiber.
Just prebiotics.
That's what a prebiotic is. Something that feeds your microbiome.
Not a probiotic,
right.
Or that the new probiotic drink that was a Super Bowl.
We will talk about that in a minute, but just full disclosure, I am the co-founder and chief medical officer of an IndieBio sponsored company called BioLumen, which makes a prebiotic fiber called 𝐿. Okay, it's right here, and I'm, full disclosure, right? I mean, I'm not here to sell, but, just so you know that this exists. And the reason is because this actually feeds the microbiome. Does a bunch of things, but it feeds the microbiome, specifically to try to improve intestinal barrier function. And we actually have data that shows that it works. So that's kind of cool. All right. Now, the biochemical barrier are these things called tight junctions. If anybody has celiac disease or knows anything about celiac disease, that's a defect in tight junctions. The main one is called zonulins. Okay, and they're proteins that hold the intestinal cells together like this. Problem is, they can be affected by your food. In particular, fructose nitrates those tight junctions, and then they're not so tight anymore.
There's fructose again.
There's fructose for everything.
Oh my gosh!
It's why I said it's the 2,000-pound gorilla, because it does everything. It's just bad news. Okay, and so that leads to intestinal permeability, leaky gut all by itself, and we have the data to show that. And then finally, there's the immunologic barrier. So those are known as the Th17 cells, and they secrete an interleukin called IL-17. And those are in the Peyer's patches strewn throughout the intestine, which are basically way stations of being able to call out the National Guard in your intestine to prevent anything from basically getting in. Problem is, depends on what the food is, because there are things that basically take out those Th17 cells, fructose being one of them. Not the only one, but one of them. So you have to keep that barrier working, and we are not. And
that will be a clue to the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
How to keep
that
barrier working.
And by the way, one of the things that takes out that mucin layer also is emulsifiers.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? So E471, anytime you see mono and diglycidyl esters on the ingredients label, that's E471. That is an artificial emulsifier. And what is an emulsifier? It's a detergent. It's the stuff you put in your clothes washer to lift the stain out of your clothes. It's Tide. Okay. What happens when you swallow a detergent? You burn a friggin' hole in your stomach. Okay. Did enough poison control as a pediatrician. Okay, those Tide Pods. Okay,
oh, yeah.
You don't have to eat a Tide Pod. You can just eat an ultra-processed food. You get the same effect.
Wow. All right. I need a little call from the audience here, because if I go with my plan, I'm going to run over time and Chris is going to get mad at me. So what I need is a roar. If you want me to ask one more deep tech, how are people enjoying this? Are we going? All right, good. Okay. I'm going to do one more. Right. Insulin-leptin relationship.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Signaling.
So insulin, as you all know, is the diabetes hormone, right? Insulin lowers your blood glucose. That's why diabetics take insulin, right? Where'd the glucose go? Where'd it go? It was in the blood. Now it's not. Where'd it go? It went to your fat, people. That's insulin's job. Insulin is the energy storage hormone. Insulin shunts energy to fat. Insulin makes fat. More insulin, more fat. Okay, take it to the bank. That's a
It's one of the take homes.
That's not an axiom. That's like a
fact.
law. That's a fact. That's just fact. Okay, insulin makes fat. Now, insulin also blocks this hormone that goes from your fat to your brain called leptin. Now, leptin's supposed to keep you from overeating, but clearly leptin's not working, because if leptin worked, we would have an obesity problem. Turns out insulin blocks that leptin signaling. So the hormone that drives the fat deposition is also the hormone that keeps you eating. So insulin's the bad guy in both cases. Insulin is the problem. And of course, we are all hyperinsulinemic. 93% of us make more insulin than we should. As a collective, we secrete 2 to 4 times the amount of insulin that we did just 40 years ago. Okay? And that's because of the food. If we fix the food, we could get the insulin down. If we got the insulin down, then the leptin would work. If the leptin would work, we wouldn't eat so much. We could solve this problem. But we can't fix it while the food industry continues to do its dirty work.
Great. All right, let's move to the last 20-minute section, if Chris will allow it. Let's get busy living. So I want to start with the reverse order here. We started at the molecular way and worked all the way up to the policy level. Let's start at the policy level. Actually, let's talk about something that I read that you've done. It's called the metabolic matrix. Explain to us a metabolic matrix and why it could be a good way to live.
Yep. So I'm sitting in my office at home during the pandemic, and I get an email from the chief business officer of a company I've never heard of. Company's called Kuwaiti Danish Dairy Company. Okay? It's like the Nestle of the Middle East. They make all sorts of crap food. They make flavored milks, they make frozen yogurt, they make ice cream, they make biscuits, they make confectionery, they make tomato sauce. That's what they make.
Full disclosure, there's biscuits at the reception, but you don't have to eat it.
You knew. All right. So they say to me, look, we know we're part of the problem. Kuwait has an 18% diabetes rate and an 80% obesity rate. We know we're the problem. We don't want to be the problem. We want to be the solution. Can you help us? Is there a way to make ultra-processed food healthy? Clearly, look, we have to feed Kuwait, and we can't
profitable.
Huh?
And profitable as a company.
And profitable, of course, profitable. It's good business. Okay. We have to be able to feed people, but at the same time, we can't grow our own food because it's 140 degrees in the shade, and every cow will die. And we can't even, grow a blade of grass. How do we do this? We're relying on ultra processed food. Can you help us? So, by the way, I took no money for this, completely gratis. What we do is we assembled a scientific advisory team, and that advisory team is still in place today, and it's wonderful. Tim Harlan, who's the head of culinary medicine at George Washington, Rachel Gao, who's a PhD RD, fatty acid expert, Andreas Kornstadt, who is a computer scientist from Hamburg, Stanford trained, Wolfram Alderson, who knows everything about the food system, and myself. And basically what we did over the next 3 years was we developed a set of criteria and a set of tiers for each of their products in order to figure out what their products did, how they worked, how they made people sick, and how we could re-engineer each product to become metabolically healthy. And we called this rubric that we set up the Metabolic Matrix, and we published it in 2023 in Frontiers in Nutrition. And this is a roadmap for any company to be able to basically rethink their entire food portfolio to become metabolically healthy by adhering to the principles of metabolic health. That is 3 things. There are 3 things in the Metabolic Matrix. 1, protect the liver. 2, feed the gut. 3, support the brain. Any food that does all 3 is healthy, whether it's ultra-processed or not. Any food that does none of the 3 is poison, whether it's ultra-processed or not. And any food that does 1 or 2 but not all 3 is going to be somewhere in the middle. So the goal was to try to move their products, which were basically all poison, and move them into new tiers where they are less metabolically detrimental and ultimately metabolically healthy. And we have been doing that. And for the last 2 years, KDD, to its credit, has turned over 10% of its 180-item portfolio. They've introduced 18 new products, re-engineered 18 products to be metabolically healthy. And we have tested them. We have tested them acutely with glucose tolerance, test insulin tolerance, test Kraft testing, basically, Kraft curves, to demonstrate that their new products are actually what they say they are, metabolically healthy.
Do people like them?
And people like them, and they're not losing any money.
Wow. They like them, they pay for them, and it's good for you.
And it's good for you.
That's living.
So it can be done. We're just not doing it. We're not doing it here. But KDD's actually set the template. They've set the roadmap showing that it can be done. And so now any food industry concern that doesn't do it is basically just evil.
Yeah.
Because they could do it, but they've chosen not to.
So when I read that paper, Rob, I went to Whole Foods, my reason, and the word foods is actually in the name of Whole Foods, even though they've been bought by Amazon.
I'm aware.
Yeah. So I went over there and did a mental map of which ones had all 3.
Okay.
I couldn't complete the thing because I was just a single guy walking around with the paper.
Yeah.
But I would say to you, most did not.
Yes, most did not.
Most did not.
Sure.
So do you have a sense of, in an average food store, which is supposed to sell food, how much would qualify as a food that Rob says is good food?
Oh, about 10%.
10%?
About 10, maybe 15.
15%. So that gives you a sense of where we need to be.
Yeah.
But it's also a glimmer of hope. There is fresh foods
it could
that
be
we
done.
need to go.
It could be done.
Yeah.
They choose not to because it's money.
All right.
Listen, I mean, think about it. When we, back in 1968, Australia, started putting seatbelts in their cars. Okay. How long did it take for the United States to do the same? 10 years. Okay. Australians showed that seatbelts save lives. Why didn't the U.S. automakers want to adopt seatbelts? They came up with every reason under the sun not to adopt seatbelts. The real reason was money. They didn't want to spend the money on it. Okay. In 1979, finally, Congress passed a law that basically said any new car built in America had to have seatbelts. So then, did seatbelts save lives? No. Not for the next 10 years, until Mothers Against Drunk Driving actually petitioned each state house separately throughout the entire country, 50 separate petitions, 50 state houses, to wear them. Because it doesn't matter if the car has the seatbelt if you don't friggin' wear it. Remember Click It or Ticket?
Yeah.
Some of you maybe. And then, did seatbelts save lives? Absolutely. So they had to expend the public health money for for a public health measure, and then you also had to have the appropriate institutional support for that to take hold and work. That's how this all works. Okay, you have to have both, and until you have both, you're not going to see any benefit. That's what we have to work toward. And the problem is the food industry, and by the way, the tech industry, have gotten a complete free pass on all of this.
Great. So there's some stuff to talk to you about if you had a steak dinner with RFK, but we might have to skip to that. Do you know RFK? We probably know him. Does he eat steaks? I don't even know.
I got 1/2 hour with RFK on the phone, mano a mano.
All right. What would you say to him?
We have to turn the camera off.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll go to the reception on that. Let's go to the human level. So go to the policy level to I think you've also covered corporations to some extent. Let's go to the human level. One of the things that, as I think about food, the sugar science can be a bit reductive, it feels. So, appetite is kind of core to being human. Yeah. There is a pleasure to eating, and
totally.
And being human is a beautiful thing, and it's really something about it is pleasurable. When we talk about this in this weighty manner, even in this podcast, in this whatever we're doing here, it feels like there's something against it. So what I want to really get from this is, what does true metabolic health look like for a human being? What is human flourishing in a way that is good metabolically?
Okay. That's a good question. That's a really good question. Metabolic health is a piece of the whole. Okay? Immune health is another piece of the whole. Mental health is another piece of the whole. Societal health is another piece of the whole. And planetary health is another piece of the whole. Okay? There are five pieces to my understanding.
Yes.
Okay. And so metabolic health doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Okay. It exists in the panoply of human existence.
But what you've done here is actually shown that it does affect mental health.
Well, it does.
It probably affects.
And it affects immune health.
It probably.
And I hate to tell you, but it affects societal health.
And
it affects planetary health.
Yeah.
I'm actually writing a book about it with my colleague at UCSF, Alyssa Epple, right now. Okay. Fact of the matter is, we have a fatal flaw in our nervous system, and it's driving all five to be dysfunctional all at the same time. And it's very related to what Daniel Kahneman showed us. He showed us that the amygdala, the area of the brain that makes immediate decisions, is dysfunctional. And when it's dysfunctional, it fucks up. And it's been fucking up pretty good for the last, I would say, 50 or so years. And we can see the signs of it everywhere. The stress, the pain that comes from amygdala dysfunction basically either makes you sick mentally or it makes you addicted mentally because you're trying to basically placate your misery. And that's how Americans are basically sleepwalking through life right now. And until we basically fix this amygdala problem, we're not going to solve it. It just so happens ultra-processed food's a big piece of that. It's not the only piece, not by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a big piece. Okay? We need to basically fix the amygdala. Now, it turns out the amygdala is actually just doing its job, but there are 4 brakes on the amygdala. Think of it this way. Okay, you got a car. Okay, each car has a wheel. Each wheel has a brake. You got 4 brakes. You step on the brake in the cab, car stops, all good. Now, what happens if one brake fails? You going to stop? Rough ride, but you'll stop. You going to do any damage? Probably not. What if 2 brakes fail? Depends which 2. If the brakes are in the back, glide to a stop. If the brakes are in the front, you might capsize. What if the brakes are on either side? It's 360. You going to stop? Eventually. You going to do any damage? Possibly. What if 3 brakes fail? You're going to stop? You're going to fishtail it, land on your head. Okay. You're going to stop. Eventually. You're going to do any damage? Oh, most assuredly. What if all 4 brakes fail at the exact same time? Then you are over the precipice and into the abyss like the last scene from Thelma and Louise. Okay? Everybody remember? Okay? Well, that's where we are right now. All 4 brakes are failing. Now, it turns out they're all failing for different reasons, but they're all failing due to the current environment that we have built for ourselves over the last 50 years. So what are the brakes? Because we're going to have to fix all the brakes in order to fix the problem. Okay? Ultra-processed food being one of the fixes. So we have to identify the 4 brakes. First brake, reasoning, prefrontal cortex. Second brake, memory, hippocampus. Third brake, afferent vagus, gut feeling, intuition. Butterflies in your stomach, if you will. Afferent vagus. And fourth brake, safety, oxytocin. Those 4 brakes. And it turns out every single one of those brakes is failing right now because of different reasons. The prefrontal cortex is failing because of dopamine. The hippocampus is failing because of cortisol. Afferent vagus is failing because of ultra-processed food, particularly lack of tryptophan. And the fourth brake, oxytocin, is failing also because of stress due to methylation of the oxytocin receptor. Bottom line, every single one of those failings, every single one of those dysfunctions is reversible. But that means you have to fix the environment that caused it. And you can't solve a problem if you don't know what the problem is. So when you say to me, what is sort of the big picture? How does this all fit together? Ultra-processed food is a piece of the puzzle. Yep. It's not the only one, but it is a very big piece, but it's a piece we could fix tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. And when we fix it, you fix it for everybody, which is kind of a good thing, as opposed to a lot of these other things, which are highly individual. So to me, that's where we start. And I can also say, without any concern of backlash, okay, until we fix it, we will not fix any of our problems. This is the line in the sand. We have to start here.
All right, I'm getting the signal here. We're good to the closing, last 5 minutes. I'm going to just do some practical advice. I want people here and people listening to go home with some clue as to how to change something. I think you've done this, but can you make this a very short answer? How would you change school lunches?
So number one, I am the chief science officer and co-founder of a nonprofit in the Bay Area called Eat Real. And our job is to get real food into K-12 nationwide. And we can do it. We can do it. We have done it. We have right now 614 school districts, 1 million kids. And we have taken, of those 1 million kids, we have taken 10 million pounds of sugar out of their diet.
Just give them the website, have everybody go look at it, because we don't have time to go.
Eatreal.org.
Eatreal.org. And it's essentially putting kitchens back into a commissary way.
Not necessarily. We don't necessarily have to put kitchens back. That's very hard to do, because the footprint, the actual the plan of the school, has basically, they've taken that away. So
but we have to be able. Neighborhood?
It's in the neighborhood.
It's in the kitchen in the neighborhood.
The kitchen's in the neighborhood instead of being shipped from something in Chicago like they were before. On railroad cars. That was nuts. But we basically develop a business plan for every school district so that they can, number one, buy at cost and buy at scale in order to reduce costs so they actually make money instead of losing money. Okay, and every kid gets an actual hot home-cooked meal every single day, and you know what's in it because you made it. Okay? And it can be done at scale and for cheaper. And we now have data to show that grades go up in the schools that adopt it.
All right. There's somebody watching here with a young family, 2 or 3 kids on the 1 to 5 early range. What should parents be doing that early to set them up for metabolic health and good habits? What is one thing you would tell them?
The one thing I would tell them, this is absolutely essential. How many times do you have to introduce a savory food to an infant before they will accept it? Mean 13.
Wow.
13 times. How many times do you have to introduce a sweet food to an infant before they will accept it? Once. What do you think that is? Okay. Why do you think that is? Okay. That's exactly the problem. And so the food industry has actually spiked all the baby food with added sugar specifically because they'll come back for more. They've branded that kid and they've branded them early. In addition, by the way, the chewing of real food actually grows the hard palate, grows the airway, increases oxygenation, reduces the risk for malocclusion, reduces the risk for obstructive sleep apnea in later life, reduces the risk for chronic disease. Those pouches that kids get their baby food from, those have to be deep-sixed and right now. Those are the worst things that have ever been developed for babies. Those are dangers.
All right. Busy professionals, maybe venture capitalists. We're busy. What should I wake up and do in the morning that would really change things for me in metabolic health? Fiber, probably.
Well, fiber would be a good start.
Like insoluble, soluble fiber.
Like
Can you be
biolumin,
specific?
yeah. Well,
biolumin.
So you need both soluble and insoluble.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you eat a fiber 1 bar, you're getting soluble. If you're taking Metamucil, you're getting soluble. Pretty much anything that's on the market is going to be soluble fiber because that's the only thing the food industry knows how to do. Turns out the insoluble fiber is actually more important. The cardboard is more important, but you can't put cardboard into food. But you can put biolumin into food, and we're doing it. We're doing it right now. We've just signed a contract with an artisan chocolatier in Oakland to make the most friggin' delicious peanut butter cup on the planet. It is 5% biolumin, you can't tell, and it is net zero carbohydrate to your metabolic system.
Oh, yeah.
How's that?
We didn't touch on artificial sugars. Does somebody talk to you about that?
Yeah.
Artificial sugar, even the good stuff, like nowadays we talk about allulose or stevia.
Yeah.
Should I go there? Because it is lower calories.
It's complicated. It is, well, it's definitely lower calories, lower fructose. That's all true. But it has its own inherent problems that go with it. And it causes leaky gut and glucose intolerance by itself. It still stimulates an insulin response by itself.
Because once you touch the sweet,
sweet hits your
hormones
tongue,
start going.
Message goes tongue to brain, sugar's coming, release the insulin. Message goes brain to pancreas, release the insulin. So you get an insulin response, and it wasn't even caloric. So what does that do? That generates fat, and that actually causes you to eat more. And that's what the data show. I'm just writing this up right now for a paper on food addiction. So that's not the answer. And there's no data anywhere on the planet that shows that use of an artificial sweetener actually reduces weight. So that is not the answer. That is a fudge that doesn't work.
Right. I wanted to get to it. Maybe as a quick answer, I've been sticking with the U.S. context, but I am cognizant of hundreds of millions of middle-class Indians, hundreds of millions of middle-class Chinese who are all growing up with wealth, who are wanting the same things we wanted. And if they eat the same things we ate, this is a whole different ballgame. Going to get just as sick.
And they do, and they have. I mean, look at the diabetes rate in India. And look at the diabetes rate in China, 14%, okay? And they're not fat. We, the fattest nation on earth, have an 11.6% diabetes rate. So how come, if they're not fat, how come they have more diabetes than us?
So here's my policy question for you. You meet the president of India, and you want to tell him one thing, and he's going to do it. What should you do?
Get rid of the food subsidies.
Subsidies? Tell me more.
We subsidize all the things that are killing us. Corn, wheat, soy, sugar. Okay, that's the bad stuff. Okay.
Right.
And what that's doing is that's giving carte blanche to the food industry to keep making the foods with corn, wheat, soy, sugar, because that's what's cheaper.
Right.
Okay. And so as long as it's cheaper, they're going to keep doing it and they're going to keep making a profit and you'll never fix the problem. So the question is, what would happen to the price of food if you got rid of all food subsidies? The Giannini Foundation at UC Berkeley actually did this modeling exercise a couple of years ago and found that the price of food would actually not change, except for two things: corn and sugar, the two things we would want to go up in order to reduce effective availability and reduce consumption. So this notion that you can't fix food subsidies is also a canard. It's, basically put there by the food industry, to basically keep their gravy train going.
Mm.
So, we got a lot of work to do.
All right. I want you to end with a hopeful note here. What gives you hope, Rob? You know so much at the molecular level. We've done the molecular level. We've done the cellular level. We've done the organ level at the liver, and maybe we touched the kidney a little bit. We've done the organism level. We've done the corporate level. We've done the policy level. There's failures at all places. There are glimmers of hope at all places.
Right.
There's personal change we could make. There's corporate change you've actually done at KDD. So tell us, what gives you hope that we can actually get somewhere with this thing?
Okay. The thing that gives me hope is that things are changing and you can see the change. Okay. Like, Malcolm Gladwell's tipping point. You can see the change. You can actually, monitor it. The food industry did it for me. Okay, the International Food Information Council, it's their public relations arm. Okay. In 2011, they asked the question, what foodstuff causes obesity? And back then, and this is general public, back then, 11% said sugar and refined carbohydrate, 42% all calories are the same or I don't know. In 2018, they asked the exact same question, the exact same way, no change. And now 33% of the public said sugar and refined carbohydrate, and the reciprocal number of people going down said all calories are the same or I don't know. We're educating the public. And when the public gets educated, they want better food. Now, there's backlash to that, like, for instance, this thing called MAHA, which is not okay. Okay, for all sorts of reasons, which we can talk about offline. Okay, but the fact of the matter is, it starts with education. There is no implementation until there's education. You have to explain to people what the problem is, and we're explaining it. And they're hearing it.
And you've done that tonight, Rob.
That's why
Thank
I'm
you.
here.
You have educated us at many levels. You've challenged us, and I just want to give you a big hand. Thank you so much.